I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with the one and only Caitriona Balfe, star of Outlander.
Hello.
Um, Caitriona, it's so great to have you back. I'm sure that you are just exhausted from being in the thick of production on season 7. Unbelievable that
I
I'm saying that. Um,
I know it's
Last
crazy,
year,
right?
you remarked to me that you were really interested in exploring parts of Claire that we hadn't really seen before, which is amazing for a series that was in season 6. Like we're still exploring this woman and who she is. So, what did you most value about this compelling narrative thread throughout the season as Claire? She learns more about herself and that self-discovery and how to deal with the aftermath of her paralyzing trauma.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me it was such an interesting season last season. I think sometimes when you're playing a character for this long, it can stagnate a little bit. And with last season, we really got to, or I really got to explore a different side of Claire that, I was kind of shocked that we were doing. When they first came to me with this storyline about the ether, it wasn't something I was like initially kind of like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. I was like quite intrigued, but I was also a little bit like, really, is that her? I don't know. But actually, it was a really interesting way of kind of showing how, with severe trauma, how that can absolutely just blow someone's psyche apart, and what happens when that happens, and then how does that person heal from that and come back from that. And it was really, really, I don't know, it was a really big challenge. I think I had to sort of dig deep with Claire in a way that I hadn't before. And, sort of exploring what her deepest, darkest fears were. So that was very interesting. But what I loved the most about it is that we came out the other side, and you show that from this and from these kind of traumas, you can really explore growth and show healing, which was really cool.
You know, I thought the ether stuff was really interesting, and it's like a nice touch. It's understandable for someone like her to turn to that because she's always trying to be so stoic. And I was actually wondering what you think of this. Was that her way of being a little self-destructive? Because that happens a lot with trauma sufferers, or was it just her way to escape and quell her severe anxiety? What was your take?
I think it's both. I think Claire is somebody who takes responsibility for a lot. She feels responsible for a lot. And I think with everything she feels, I mean, at least last season, she was feeling like she was the instigator of everything. So everything that was happening, all these ripple effects, were because of her. So in a way, it was a punishment, a self punishment. I think quite often when people have experienced sexual trauma like that and sexual attacks, they also feel in some way like it's their fault. And so quite often, one of the ways that they act out is by self harming in some ways. Um, so it was that, but it was also a quietening, especially in the beginning. This is the thing when people start to self medicate. Quite often in the beginning, it is just as a reprieve or because it feels good in that instant. And then, even when it stops working and it stops sort of um, doing the job that you initially took it for, you're already in the addiction at that point. So that was kind of where it was with Claire. Um, but yeah, it was also, I think, what I was glad we did was that we showed the manifestation. That she sort of created this vision of Lionel, and it gave voice to all of those inner fears and deepest darkest worries, and all of those things that we punish ourselves with, the things that we think about ourselves, the worst things we think about ourselves that we never let anybody hear. That they all started to come out through this sort of symbol, which was
Yeah.
Lionel.
Yeah, I must say, like, this show is a rollicking adventure. It's beautifully rendered. There's so much to love about it, but that is actually quite profound. And for you all to be tackling those themes I actually know, because from speaking to people, how much that resonated with, particularly with people who have suffered some kind of trauma, which is a lot. So yeah, that's really amazing.
You
And
know, I think Jamie Payne is incredible. You know, we were so lucky to have him tackling, especially episode 7. But with the writers, Danny, we worked really hard. You know, it was very collaborative, and it was really kind of Danny had this great idea of sort of using this manifestation of Lionel, and then it was just about getting the voice right. And I think when you do subject matter like this, there is such a responsibility to at least be thoughtful. You're not always going to get it right. You know, we're all going to make mistakes, and some would argue that, you know, TV and entertainment is not the right forum for these things, but I think we're showing life, and this is part of life. But I think you have to at least be thoughtful and
yeah,
try and make it as, and try and challenge yourself to make it as responsible as possible.
yeah. And then also, entertaining and enrapturing the audience, which is what you're certainly doing. The season 6 finale opened with Claire and a younger Brie, we assume, in this diner. It's so fascinating to see Claire still dissociating to try to cope with what she was going on, the existing peril that she was in at the time, transporting herself to somewhere else. It's a really simple question. Do you enjoy actually mixing it up a little and being able to portray Claire in different settings? Because we certainly love seeing it.
I love it. You know, I especially love when I get to do 60s Claire. You know, as much as, you know, the end of season, I'm trying to remember which seasons we're on now. Season 5 with Traumatic, all of that disassociative stuff where we were in the 60s.
Yeah,
I just thought it was so cool. You know, I love who she is in that time, you know, that she has this kind of armor of the hair and the makeup and the clothes, and she's, you know, she's so different to how we see her when she's in the 18th century, where she's just so of the earth, and, you know, there's nothing sort of vain about her, or there's no accoutrements, unless, you know, unless she's going to a fancy dinner, but
yeah,
it's so natural and earthy. But yet when she was in the 60s, she was so repressed. She was so repressed, and it just showed in like this armor that she was wearing, and I love that. It's really fun. But unfortunately, that wasn't actually me sitting in Carmi's. That was like, because you never see the face. That was
you
like
don't.
that was like a little. I probably shouldn't say things like this, but that was, yeah, it was that title sequence. That was a double in a red dress.
Wow.
I know. I wanted to sit in Carmi's and eat some chips, but I wasn't. It wasn't me.
That's amazing. I had no idea. There's a scoop, everybody. I'm sure that people probably
Yeah,
knew
there's
that, but I
something
didn't.
I'm
I was all
telling for
over
the
it. I
first
thought, oh
time.
wow, they're just so dedicated to their craft to be doing this little scene without even seeing their faces. Um, Speaking of dedicated to craft, and the incredible Jamie Payne, every time he directs an episode, we're all just like, wow, he's so talented. That finale with the shootout was really, really well done. It's literally Claire and Jamie against the world. And it's not often that you get to do that really overtly physical stuff. So, what do you recall from that time on set most vividly about the whole standoff and how well choreographed and shot it was?
I mean, it was choreographed so brilliantly and planned so brilliantly, because I was also like, I think 6.5 months pregnant.
That's right.
So it's funny that you mentioned how physical it was, because it was quite physical, but I was literally waddling from like one place to the next. There's a scene where I think it's when we're eating on the ground and I have to get up, and yeah, there was many people laughing because every time I had to get up, it was like a
Oh, wow.
um, you know, that whole episode is so great because it's such a thrilling episode. You know, there's so much to it. I think, you know, you have this shootout where they feel very, you know, it's also, you see them working as a team so brilliantly. But you do see them against these incredible odds, you know, fighting against all of the Browns. and then you get these beautiful intimate moments, and I love the way Jamie sort of pans back and you see them in this like destructed house, and it's just the two of them, and you just feel so, I don't know, you just want to protect them so much. And then we go on a traveling show, and then it's like all of that, it's just such a great episode. But I think it's funny, it's always fun when you get to do things like that, because it's
Yeah,
so unlike your anything you do in real life. I would never be shooting guns and running around like that. It's just, and I think it is interesting to do stuff like that and to sort of
yeah,
see what life was like back then.
yeah. I mean, you were pregnant during the season. The season was truncated because of COVID, but I assume it was also because like there's only so much that you can do physically. And I recall years ago when Gillian Anderson was on the X Files, and there was this whole like everyone was looking out for how many binders she'd be carrying on set while she was super pregnant, and we were doing the same thing, kind of like working out. In fact, I didn't even realize, because I'm hopeless with personal details. It was Paula, my wife, my partner in crime. She's like, I'm pretty sure Caitriona Balfe was, pregnant during this season, and she was always looking out for it. I was like, really? I had no idea. So that was good. I had no idea. That's because I'm a
Well, I
little
think I
hopeless.
think they I think they cleverly did some digital retouching at
Did
the end,
they?
and also, but Trisha Bigger, our costume designer, did wonders. I mean, I'm in massive,
Yeah.
you know, I have aprons all the time, where I have that great coat that sort of hides
Mm.
everything. And Trisha, her and her team were incredible, and it was very funny in the beginning. She was like, "Oh, you're tall and thin, you won't show it all until later," and then it was like 3 weeks later they were like, "Oh shit," um,
Let's
you
take
know,
that dress out. Yeah.
yeah. So it was like we would have fittings every week to 2 weeks, and things
Wow.
would be getting let out. And but she very cleverly, created those waistcoats I was wearing that
Yeah.
loosen in the back and all of those things. But yeah, it was COVID time. You know, Scotland was in lockdown.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have just been stuck inside an apartment. So in a weird way, it was sort of the best time to be pregnant, because I actually got to leave the house and see
Yeah.
people.
That's a good
Um,
point. I never thought of that.
yeah.
But then, you're doing scenes like the stuff with Malva, particularly towards the
Mm.
end, the C-section, her murdered body. And then of course when Claire opens up to Jamie finally, those scenes, there was a lot you had to do there, where you had to go really big and really let loose. And so much of her torment comes full circle in those scenes. Does it take much time to prepare so that those scenes resonate properly, emotionally, and authentically, while you're also heavily pregnant and dealing with, this C-section, which goes very wrong? A lot of that must have been hard for you to do.
The C-section, it was not nice. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that was a pretty horrible day. But you just sort of have to, like, I remember they were like trying to get the rig set up, and the blood rig, and it wasn't working quite right, and we were sort of standing on set, and you have to do this big scene, and you're kind of like, lots of people talking, and we were sort of ready to go, and then we weren't ready to go. And for me, in those moments, you just have to zone out. You just have to put yourself in your zone. I put music on. You try and ignore everything that's going on, and just forget yourself, forget everything except for what you're about to do. But Dr. Claire, our medical assistant, or our medical advisor, who's been on the show since the very beginning,
Mm.
she was also pregnant. So her and I were having meetings before this, where we were talking about how we were going to do this, and we were both like, "This is crazy. This is horrible." We were like, "This is really awful." But you know, that's the job. You sort of you just do it on the day. And I was very lucky. Jessica is amazing, and having built up that relationship over the couple of months with her, and as Malva, and you just feed into what you've been, what the character is doing, and where they're at. I think one of the hardest scenes though was and it was just sitting in that church with that baby little coffin there. I think that was one of the
Oof.
hardest things, having
Yeah,
to do that. That was not. That was a
that was
day where
hard
I
to
went home
watch.
and I was like, I would really love a glass of wine, but I can't have
Oh,
one. You know,
no, oh yes, of course. I forgot about that. Because that's exactly what I would have done. A nice glass of red would have just
it would have
soothed
washed
that
that
pain.
away, but no, you can't have it.
Yeah, not that time. You had to wait. Um, yeah, that's really interesting. I'm thinking also that the bond that Claire and Jamie has. By the way, what is on your playlist? I think everyone wants to know that. I mean, that's an
Yeah,
entertainment tonight
somebody asked me
question.
that. I'm a little, I don't know, I'm a little reluctant to give it
Yeah, don't
out.
tell me.
It's,
That's for
no,
you
it's
only.
just, you
That's
know what
fine.
it is? It's like you find songs that work, and I'm always so scared because sometimes they stop working, and I'm
Yeah,
always
and
so
then you don't.
scared of it,
Yes,
like,
understand. That
yeah.
changes. That's an organic problem. Me too. I've got my song, I've got my playlist, and they're very important. And if without them, I would be screwed. So I get it. Let's put that aside. I just wanted to ask because I know that I'm going to get attacked when I ask me that. Now, the bond between Claire and Jamie is super important to this show. It is pretty much the crux of the whole show. And to me, and I think to a lot of people, it's aspirational. No matter your age, your gender, your sexuality, that kind of relationship has become very realistic in the way they communicate and the way they have this shorthand with each other. So, for example, the moment when Claire and Jamie share the bed that last time before Claire is carted off to stand trial, it's very profound for that reason. I think a lot of people really responded to that. So, does the aspirational aspect of this relationship occur to you both and the team when you're on set performing it?
I mean, you can't, when you're performing, you can't really think about what other people are thinking about it.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
I know we work really hard to try and ground it as
yeah, good.
aspirational as it is. I also think it has to feel real. It has to, we do joke sometimes, Sam and I, that they're so codependent that, like, she'll just be going to the bathroom and he'll be like, Sassenach, if you're not,
Oh.
if I'm not, if I die before you get back. But it is amazing. It's like, it's
It's
very
true.
sweet, but we do joke about that sometimes. But, you have to, I love, like, what I love about them, and especially last season, because they weren't always in sync,
No,
last season.
that's
And in
normal.
fact, that's kind of what, you know, why Claire sort of went into such a spiral, is because she wasn't letting Jamie in. And I think the path to her healing was when she finally opened up to him and he saw her for all of her vulnerabilities, all of these, she was so ashamed and she was so scared of telling him everything. But as soon as you're hiding from somebody, you sort of lose that connection. And it's great that we show that all relationships, they all have a rhythm, and it's like we're not always 100% in sync, even if it's the best relationship in the world,
Yeah,
and to grow and to evolve and to deepen, which I think they have. And I think actually what we see in the beginning of season 7 is times where where, especially for, well, I'll just speak for myself and my character, but when Claire is going through something, she has now learned that she has to share. And
yeah,
by sharing with him, you know, that stops these kind of, compartmentalizing and like dampening things down, which are always
yeah,
going to rear their head later.
yeah.
Um,
That's right. That's the aspirational thing that I think it's the romance novel stuff is beautiful and everyone loves that stuff. For me and for others, it's about the realistic ways that couples communicate and bond.
and
And that's
problem
what,
solve. And,
yeah, and
I
are
think
there for
that,
each other and all that stuff. That's
yeah.
real.
And
I
that's the
love that.
beautiful thing about them. Like they always find a way back to each other, you
Yeah,
know, and
yeah.
and they are at their best. But what I also love about them is that they let each other be who they are,
They have
which is
space to
also the
breathe.
beautiful
Yeah,
thing. She's not trying to change him. He's not trying to change her. They're just like, they love who each other is and they let each other live in their own spheres, but they're always like this with each other. So,
that's
yeah.
right. And now they've been torn apart at the end of the season. So, I mean, hopefully it won't take long for them to be back. We'll get to that in a second. One of the
No.
revelations of season six was Mark Lewis Jones as Tom Christie. I
Oh,
He's a guy that I didn't want to like, but he's so damn compelling that I couldn't resist.
he's
Like, what a
oh,
performance! And
he's
despite the
amazing.
animus between them, like there's a real animus between Claire and Tom, but ultimately he cares about her and he wants to protect her. How do you explain or rationalize that strange connection? And what did you most appreciate about working with Tom? Working with Mark.
Well, working with Mark was fantastic. He is just the most soulful, um, darling, I don't know, just darling man. He has so much heart and like he's so talented. Like I don't know, just doing scenes with him, you're just blown away by what he brings to that character. And that's the thing with Tom. I love how when Claire first meets him, it's just like, who is this annoying,
Yeah,
pompous, pious,
we were
you
all like that.
know,
Yeah,
all of the things like the God fearing and the shoving the Bible down her throat and like, just hating on women, all of these things. But she can feel, I don't know, Claire has such an empathetic nature that she can feel the pain that sort of, you know, beats under all of that. And she's intrigued by him. I don't know. There's something. She's intrigued. I think she knows that there's a much more intelligent and open or accepting person under there. Like deep, deep under there. Um
really deep. Yeah,
and she's just intrigued by him. And I
yeah,
think, there's glimmers of his humor, and then when he talks about his ex-wife or his deceased wife, and you know she can just see that there was another path for this man, and the circumstances kind of changed that. And I think
yeah.
she always is trying to see the good in people, and it
She
gets
is.
very interesting in season 7, I would just
Oh
say.
my God. Yeah, I have a feeling it will. Not that I have any idea, but yeah, Claire does that a lot. And sometimes I'm like, Claire, stop. Just leave Malva. Don't even talk to her because I know where it's going to end up. But of course, we need the drama. Um, I know it's early stages yet. Obviously, you're in production now. You must be exhausted. How is season seven going? Are you all having a good time? Do you think that we're going to be as wowed by it as we expect?
It's been a really great start. I mean, I would say from all of us, this has felt like such a, I don't know, like a rejuvenation this season. Because I think obviously last season was really tough. It was, I think for everybody, just the circumstances, we were all locked down, even though we were shooting, it was a bit of a grind. It was a great season. And I think, you know,
Was.
we felt really proud of the work, but I think it was a really taxing season on everyone
Yeah.
sort of personally. Um, but this season, and maybe it's just that we're all like, oh, the world is open again and we're all back, but it's felt really strong. We had an amazing director, Lisa Clark, for the first two eps, and she has been fantastic. Really beautiful, strong eps. We just wrapped 3 and 4
Wow.
with the director Jackie Gold, and it was really, really great. The scripts are great. We have a lot of scripts in
Mm.
early, so I think I don't know, we all feel very organized. It feels very,
Wow.
I don't know, it just feels really great. So we're all excited about it.
Yeah, I that's an
Talk
understatement.
to us in like 8 months when we're still shooting though, and
Yeah, let's check
we'll see
in
how
because
we
I
feel.
think by then you'll look like the Claire that with the grey hair, you'll just be
Yeah,
so exhausted. But
there will
that's
be no
okay.
makeup. We will have all the gray hairs naturally.
Yeah, and you'll just be that's very method of you, which I really appreciate.
We just aim to please.
I really, really love it. I know it's early, but what are the chances of continuing after season seven, like to finish out Diana's novels? Is that something that you're open to? It's all up in the air. Where are we at with that?
I mean, it's still in the air. I don't know. It's hard to look past beyond this
Yeah.
season, just given that it's 16 eps and we have to shoot until February, March of next year.
Wow.
I think once we get through that, everyone will need a breather and see. I don't know. I mean,
We'll see.
I'm sorry, I can't tell you any more than that. Sorry.
No, that's understandable. My final question is, given the journey you've been on with Belfast, how did that experience affect your mindset and your creative process coming into production on season 7? Did it make a huge difference for you?
Um, no, I mean, I think, look, I think I just feel really grateful at the moment. Like I
Yeah.
had such an amazing time filming Belfast. It was such an incredible experience. The people that I got to work with was amazing. You know, we all bonded like crazy, and then we went on this crazy campaign toury thing that
Yeah.
I'd never done before, and that's a whole thing in itself. But it was an amazing experience. I think things like that don't come along very often, and you just have to be so grateful. Um, and then I get to come back to Scotland and work with all my friends, and see everybody. So it's been really lovely. I think the only thing is when you talk about the length of seasons, that's the only difficult thing. And I think if
Yeah.
we could shorten them, I think we'd all be happier,
Yeah.
but it just takes so long to film. So,
Yeah, it does. And yeah, and it would take so much out of you as well. And it stops you and Sam and everyone else from doing other projects. So hopefully there'll be a way for you all to balance that out, because we would like to see, I want to see like geriatric Claire and Jamie, like with the
by
walking
the end of
stick.
the season, you'll be seeing
You
it.
probably will be. But like in the meantime, we are super excited. We're just going to have to spend the next few months just talking about season 6 online while we wait. And thanks, Caitriona, once again for your time. You always give such great interviews. Appreciate
Oh,
it.
my pleasure. So lovely talking to you.